Hi, I'm Tracy, VE3TWM. Thank you for tuning in to Outdoors on the Air. For years now, one of my primary go-to portable radios has been my Yaesu FT-897D. This versatile rig has long impressed me with its ruggedness, form factor, and feature set. Several years ago, Yaesu discontinued the 897D and brought in a new all-band, all-mode transceiver in a similar package size. The new radio, the FT-991, was quickly replaced in the line with the current model, the FT-991A. Like the FT-897, the 991A includes coverage from 160 meters to 70 centimeters, with all modes available on all bands. But the 991A goes far beyond that in terms of features. This compact rig has a wealth of impressive technology, much of which is user customizable. Yaesu has packed a lot of capability into the 991A, which makes it a top choice for users that desire full functionality in a smaller case size. Over the past several years, I've heard many 991A users extol the virtues and performance of their rigs. Standout features include a built-in antenna tuner, powerful DSP for bandwidth and noise control, and easy computer connection via USB. But this video is not about whether the FT-991A is a good rig. My primary interest and the subject of this evaluation is the suitability of the 991A to portable operations. I recently acquired a 991A with the intention of determining if this rig would be able to replace the FT-897D in my collection. To earn that right, it would have to do that based solely upon its prowess as a viable portable option. I have not seen many YouTube videos showcasing the 991A in portable situations, so my knowledge of its suitability was lacking. It was time for me to take a hard look at how this transceiver would perform in the field. So with that in mind, you need to know my particular use case. Note that you may have a different set of operating requirements than I do. Please bear this in mind as I explain what I do and understand my needs may not align with yours. At this point in my ham radio journey, I am strictly a single sideband op. I do not use digital modes, and in that grouping I count CW. As stated, the rig will be used as a battery-powered HF transceiver. I use my portable radios for parks on the air, contests, and casual use. Two of my favorite operating activities are Field Day and the CQ Worldwide Single Sideband DX contest. Most of what I do is tabletop operation. While I have done and will continue to do backcountry operating, where gear needs to be compact and relatively light as it will be carried in, I am open to acquiring an additional rig that would not be used in such a remote setting. Now let's look at the criteria I use to make the determination if a rig is suitable for my needs. While I will mention these attributes in a particular order, they are not necessarily listed in order of importance. Each of these items are important to me. Ruggedness. Gear taken into the field needs to withstand a certain amount of rough handling. Display visibility in all lighting conditions, including bright sunlight. Strong audio to produce enough volume to be heard over ambient noise often found in the field. Ease of use. The ability to access most commonly needed controls quickly and with minimal menu diving is important. Good battery life. Capable of operating the desired number of hours with a reasonably sized battery. Compact in size. Needs to be small enough to present no problems with space during transport. Reliability. The rig must be built to a high enough standard that the operator has confidence in its ability to perform when called upon. Given that good battery life is one of my most desired features, before taking the 991A out into the field, I ran some tests to see just how much current the rig draws under various conditions. It's important to note this testing was done in my basement, which is typically the coolest part of the house. The ambient temperature rarely gets above 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and at times dips down into the 60s. I connected an external ammeter to the 991A's power cord and commenced measuring. When first turned on, the rig drew a surprisingly low 1.2 amps. But as soon as I hit the transmit button on the microphone, the fan kicked in and the input current increased to 1.6 amps. On another test, I turned the rig on and without transmitting, turned on the internal tuner. Immediately, the fan kicked in and the input current increased to 1.6 amps. I next turned on the rig, did not engage the tuner, and did not transmit, but left the receiver running. After a few minutes, the fan started up, and the input current increased from 1.2 amps to 1.6 amps. Turning the tuner on and off did not change the state of the fan or reduce current below 1.6 amps. That was the result of the receive current draw testing, so I focused on the transmit side. I started measuring at 5 watts RF out, increased to 10, then up by 10 watts, step by step until I reached 100. These numbers don't seem too outlandish, at least until compared with the other portable rigs I own. Take a look at how the transmit current draw of the 991A compares with that of the FT-897D and the FT-891. The numbers were painting a dark picture, but I still had to take the rig outdoors to see how it would perform in order to make a final determination. The opportunity to evaluate the 991A came when my nephew Daniel and I traveled to Halfway Lake Provincial Park last year for some camping and a POTA activation. We were very fortunate in that the weather was hot and sunny. Though shade was available at spots on the campsite, we elected to set up the picnic table in the sun as biting flies were patrolling the shady edges of the site. As I pulled the transceiver from its carry case, I was pleased to see it was still in perfect condition. Thumbs up for passing the ruggedness test. We hooked up the FT-991A to a 10 amp hour LifePO4 battery and fired it up. The speaker came to life, and we were on the air. This is when I encountered the first issue. I had been using the 991A as my primary base station at home. In the basement shack, there isn't a lot of light, as I prefer to use small desk lamps rather than strong overhead lighting. Therefore, I tended to use the 991A with its display turned way down. When packing up the rig for the trip to this park, I had forgotten to turn the backlight back up before disconnecting power and placing it into its transport bag. Now, here at the park in the bright sunshine, I had a great deal of difficulty navigating the on-screen menu to get to the brightness setting. This may have been due to a limitation of 60-year-old eyes, but regardless, I had an issue that I have never experienced with any of my other portable rigs. I was eventually able to find the setting, but then noticed I needed to put the display at 100% brightness to clearly see the display. On the positive side, when the display was set to 100%, there was no problem at all reading even the fine print. While I am on the topic of lighting, I would like to commend the Yaesu designers for thoughtfully providing backlit keys. That's a great feature, and it's well implemented on the 991A. Once I had the display sorted out, I noticed the rig's internal fan had come on and was running at full speed. I was not at all surprised at this, as the rig was sitting in direct sunlight, and the day was warm, with temperatures in the mid-80s. I began to get concerned about the battery life with the brightness at 100% and the continuous fan operation. But I set the power out to 20 watts, and Daniel and I started our operation. We got into the operation, and the 991A performed flawlessly. We had reports of a strong signal and good audio. On the receiving side, the voices that were coming back to us were loud and clear through the built-in speaker. We were rolling. Then, in the midst of the action, and without warning, the rig's front panel darkened and the audio stopped. The freshly charged 10 amp hour battery had died. I checked my watch. We were only an hour into the activation. From my previous experience, I know that with a 10 amp hour battery, I can run my Yaesu FT-991A for about 4 hours at 20 watts in similar situations. A friend of mine has an ICOM IC7100. He can run his rig at 100 watts on a 30 amp hour battery for about 5 hours. To have the 991A deplete a 10 amp hour battery after only an hour at 20 watts was quite disappointing. I had also brought along a 30 amp hour battery, and we quickly swapped out the 10 amp hour one and resumed the activation. With battery life like that, and having the use case that I do, the 991A was not going to be suitable for my needs, simply due to being so power hungry compared to my FT-897D and my FT-891. It just does not provide enough added utility over those other two rigs to warrant inclusion in my portable collection. And that was too bad. I like the 991A a lot. It has flaws, but all rigs do. For those who run with large batteries and do not plan on operating over longer periods of time than a typical POTA activation, the 991A will likely serve very well. And of course, with a solar panel, run times can be extended. But I have not yet made the leap to solar. And again, the 991A does not provide me with enough extra capability to make that investment worthwhile. I might as well stick with my current rigs. To summarize, I sold my 991A to a happy ham who is enjoying this nice little rig in his home shack. Is the 991A a portable Champ or Chump? It's neither. It's a good solid rig with a lot of features that appeals to many. It's just not the portable rig I was hoping it could be. That's all for this time. Thank you for watching. Now it's your turn. Get out of the shack, get outdoors, and get on the air. 7-3 from Tracy, VE3, TWM.